Angel Reese found herself at the center of attention after celebrating a defensive play she wasn't even involved in. The block actually came from her teammate, who rejected Caitlin Clark's shot, but Reese immediately rushed over and started jawsing at Clark as if she had made the stop herself. Not long after, the momentum shifted in a dramatic way when Natasha Howard delivered a physical response that sent a message loud and clear. By the time the game ended with Indiana securing an 83-71 victory, the stat sheet painted a rough picture for Reese, who finished with 4 turnovers, more than any other player on the floor. The outcome spoke volumes before anyone even stepped in front of a microphone. Now, let's break down that because it perfectly captures why moments like this generate so much discussion whenever these teams meet. The play started when Camila Cardoso rotated over and cleanly blocked a shot attempt from Caitlin Clark. It was a solid defensive effort and exactly the kind of play coaches love to see. Cardoso earned all the credit for the stop. The interesting part came afterward. Reese wasn't the player who challenged the shot. She wasn't the defender forcing the action, and she wasn't even in position when the block occurred. Yet, the instant the ball was swatted away, she rushed toward Clark and began celebrating in her face as though she had personally made the highlight play. What made the moment stand out even more was that the officials were positioned nearby with a clear view of everything. Everyone on the court could see who made the defensive play and who simply inserted themselves into the aftermath. It became one of those sequences that quickly grabbed the attention of fans because it highlighted the emotions, tension, and competitive energy that continue to surround every matchup involving Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. There was plenty of talking on the court, but that's what made the situation so interesting. Charging over to chirp at an opponent after a defensive play you didn't even make is a risky move. It takes a lot of confidence, or, depending on how you view it, a need to create a moment when the game itself isn't giving you one. A few possessions later, Angel Reese turned her attention back to Caitlin Clark, this time appearing to tell her to stop flopping while speaking within earshot of the officials. That comment immediately caught attention. After all, it came just moments after Reese had celebrated a teammate's block as if she had been the one responsible for it. The Indiana Fever bench noticed everything. Cameras caught players reacting from the sideline, and that's not surprising. At the professional level, athletes pay attention to every interaction, every gesture, and every attempt to gain an edge. Nothing slips by unnoticed. What really made the sequence stand out, though, was the timing. Trash talk tends to carry more weight when it's supported by what's happening in the game. When your team is controlling the action and you're playing a major role in that success, the confidence feels earned. But that wasn't the situation here. As the game unfolded, Indiana continued to apply pressure, while Reese struggled to take care of the basketball. Turnovers were piling up, and the scoreboard wasn't exactly supporting the bravado. The energy and emotions were there, but the production wasn't matching the performance. That's why the moment became such a talking point. When one of the most recognizable players on the floor is having a difficult night, watching the game start to slip away, and finishes with 4 turnovers, celebrating a teammate's highlight and engaging in constant back and forth, can draw just as much attention as the actual stat line. In the end, the contrast between the talk and the numbers is what left fans debating the sequence long after the final buzzer sounded.
Clark around the Hines Allen screen. Clark to the Ocott.
She's showing us.
Yeah.
She's showing us something.
The
I like
rookie's
it.
moving.
The improvement on that end. I mean, this is terrific. Chase down that length that she has. We talk so much.
This has become a familiar pattern with Angel Reese. Some of her most animated moments in these high-profile matchups tend to come when her impact on the game itself isn't matching the attention she's drawing. The rivalry headlines often take center stage, especially on nights when the box score tells a different story. But the Indiana Fever weren't caught off guard by any of it. Throughout the offseason, Indiana prepared for teams that rely on physicality, intensity, and constant pressure to disrupt Caitlin Clark. They knew there would be hard contact, emotional exchanges, and plenty of attempts to turn the game into a mental battle. None of that was unexpected. So when Reese began creating early moments that drew attention from the crowd and cameras, the Fever didn't panic. They didn't lose focus. and they didn't have to make emergency adjustments. They had already anticipated this type of environment long before tip-off. More importantly, Indiana's response wasn't built around a special play call or some complicated defensive adjustment. It came in the form of a veteran presence on the floor. The Fever had a player whose mission was simple: make every possession difficult for Reese. Every catch in the post had to be earned. Every battle for position had to be contested. Every trip into the paint had to feel uncomfortable and physically demanding. Instead of engaging in the back and forth or trying to win the spotlight, she let her play do the talking. There was no need for extra theatrics, no need to argue with officials, and no need to insert herself into someone else's highlight. She delivered her message the old-fashioned way, through relentless physical defense and disciplined execution. And as the game wore on, that approach proved far more effective than anything that happened after the whistle.
Angel Reese, part 9! Get ready, she's gonna whine! Let's get it! Bang! Crazy stat for you, 19% of her shots are either blocked or an air ball. 19% of the time, they don't hit the rim! Bang! Holy mackerel, it's a Caitlin Clark cameo! No, don't do it to him! Protect the kids! Bang! He's a foot away, should be an easy putback, right? 19%! Bang! Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, get swatted like Angel Reese! Bang!
Throughout last season, a lot of NBA teams followed a similar blueprint against Caitlin Clark. The strategy was straightforward: be as physical as possible whenever she had the ball. Defenders bumped her, crowded her space, and constantly challenged her movement, knowing that officials often allowed the game to remain highly physical. The goal was simple: wear her down over 4 quarters and make every possession a battle. At times, that approach created real problems for Indiana. The Fever's front office saw it all on film and understood that simply hoping things would change wasn't a solution. If opponents were going to keep testing Clark with that level of contact, Indiana needed a response of its own. That's where Myisha Hines-Allen entered the picture. When opposing players attack the paint or try to impose their physicality, they now know there's a veteran waiting to meet that challenge. Her presence forces opponents to think twice about how aggressively they want to play, especially when Clark is involved in the action. That's the value Hines-Allen brings. She gives Indiana a tougher edge, adds a layer of protection through her physical style, and ensures that if a game turns into a battle, the Fever have someone fully prepared to answer it.
You just wonder if she says, F it, the rim's up there somewhere, has to be, right? Bang! Dirty player, look at her. Watch this, elbow to Caitlin Clark's head, send her to Guantanamo Bay! Bang! Go ahead, review that. What's been planted longer, a full-grown maple tree or Angel Reese in the paint? How about it? Bang! Maple? But what about butter? Butter? Butter pecan! Bang!
Before Myisha Hines-Allen joined the Fever, Caitlin Clark often had to navigate an exhausting amount of physical play every night. Nearly every trip into the lane came with extra contact. She was bumped off her path, hit coming around screens, and frequently forced to play through aggressive defense without getting a whistle. Over time, that takes a toll, not just physically, but mentally as well. For a point guard, that matters more than people realize. The more energy Clark had to spend dealing with defenders trying to knock her off rhythm, the less she could devote to the areas that make her such a dangerous playmaker. Instead of focusing entirely on reading defensive coverages, anticipating rotations, and creating opportunities for teammates, part of her attention was constantly tied up in battling through contact. That's where Hines-Allen changes the dynamic. Her presence forces opposing coaches and defenders to think differently about how they attack Clark. If teams send extra defenders to trap or double team Clark, there's now an experienced veteran positioned to make them pay for leaving her open. If defenders try to blow up actions by getting overly physical around screens, they have to deal with Hines-Allen setting those screens with purpose and strength. Indiana added other valuable pieces as well. Sophie Cunningham provides size, toughness, and defensive versatility on the perimeter, while Natasha Howard brings experience and reliability across multiple areas of the floor. Both players strengthen the roster in important ways. But Hines-Allen offers something unique. She directly influences how opponents approach Clark. Her physical presence changes the calculations defenders make in real time. Players assigned to contain Clark know that one mistake, One over-aggressive gamble or one poorly timed rotation can leave them dealing with a powerful veteran around the basket. That's the difference. Hines Allen doesn't just contribute through her own statistics, she alters the way defenses behave. And when opponents start second-guessing their decisions, it creates more space for Clark to do what she does best: control the game, create opportunities, and put pressure on defenses from every angle.
Quite a bit of foul trouble in this half. To put it into perspective, Mabry has 3, Sanaya Rivers has 3 fouls, Bria Hartley has 3 fouls.
That's your wing depth.
Ugh.
Indiana's front office didn't make headlines with a blockbuster move or spend the offseason chasing the biggest name available. Instead, they targeted Myisha Hines Allen, a veteran who understood exactly what the team needed and was willing to embrace that responsibility. That may sound simple, but it's actually one of the toughest roles to fill. Not every experienced player is eager to do the dirty work, support a franchise star, and take on the physical battles that rarely show up in the box score. Hines Allen never hesitated, whether she's setting hard screens, fighting for position in the paint, or stepping into physical confrontations before they escalate. She represents the identity Indiana wanted to establish. Every possession sends the same message: the Fever are no longer going to be pushed around. And when Hines Allen and Angel Reese finally found themselves battling in the paint, it didn't take long to see how intense that matchup was going to be. One of the game's most talked about moments came when Hines Allen used her strength and positioning to knock Reese off balance and send her to the floor. There was no controversy attached to it. It wasn't a flagrant foul, and it wasn't the result of an official's questionable decision. It was simply a veteran using physical basketball to win a physical battle. The crowd reacted immediately because everyone understood what they had just witnessed. Reese entered the game with a reputation for toughness and physicality around the basket. She has built her career on competing aggressively and imposing her will inside. Hines Allen didn't try to avoid that challenge. Instead, she met it head-on and matched that intensity from the opening minutes. The result was a matchup that quickly became uncomfortable. On paper, Reese's final numbers looked respectable: 11 points and 10 rebounds, good enough for a double-double. At first glance, those statistics seem solid, but the full story becomes clearer when you look deeper. She also finished with 4 turnovers, more than any player on either team. Her shooting efficiency left plenty to be desired, and many of her rebounds came through effort and persistence rather than offensive dominance. The raw numbers were there, but the overall impact wasn't nearly as impressive as the double-double might suggest. More importantly, those turnovers weren't random mistakes. Indiana's defense consistently crowded Reese whenever she touched the ball, helped defenders quickly collapsed into the paint, cutting off easy opportunities and forcing difficult decisions. Hines Allen played a major role in that pressure, using her positioning and physical presence to push Reese into awkward angles, rushed passes, and uncomfortable moves. When those mistakes happened, Indiana capitalized. Several of those turnovers turned into transition opportunities for the Fever, helping swing momentum and widen the gap on the scoreboard. And that's what made Hines Allen's performance so valuable. She didn't have one memorable physical play and then fade out of the game. She remained engaged on nearly every possession, making Reese work for every catch, every rebound, and every scoring opportunity. Nothing came easy. Every post-up became a battle. Every touch required extra effort. Every attempt to create space was immediately challenged. By the end of the night, Hines Allen had done exactly what Indiana brought her in to do: bring toughness, disrupt opposing frontcourt players, and make life difficult for anyone trying to establish control in the paint.
Now, take a look at this here altercation where Caitlin Clark hit a logo bomb. I mean, absolutely hit a logo bomb all over. And then she's talking that talking cash, S-H-I-T. And you're going to see look at Myisha Hines Allen running to get in front of her. Don't you dare. Don't you dare do nothing. You better fall back.
Aaliyah Boston delivered another huge performance, finishing with 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 made three-pointers, and that proved to be a major problem for Atlanta throughout the night. The Dream simply didn't have a reliable solution for a player who could stretch the floor from deep while still dominating key areas inside. That versatility put Atlanta in a difficult position all game long. If their big stayed near the basket, Boston was comfortable stepping outside. and knocking down perimeter shots. If they closed out too aggressively, she had the skill and strength to attack open space and create opportunities closer to the rim. No matter which adjustment Atlanta made, it seemed to open up another problem somewhere else. As a team, Indiana's defensive effort was just as impressive. The Fever held the Dream to their lowest scoring output of the season, and that wasn't the result of luck or an off night. It was the product of a well-executed game plan that forced Atlanta's top players into difficult situations over and over. Again, Ryan Howard, Alicia Gray, and Brianna Jones are all capable of taking over games offensively, but Indiana never allowed them to get comfortable. Instead, the Fever consistently pushed Atlanta into contested looks, rushed decisions, and shots that came earlier in possessions than the Dream would have preferred. Indiana dictated the terms of the game from the opening tip. Their defense remained connected, disciplined, and aggressive, making it extremely difficult for Atlanta to establish any rhythm. By the time the Dream started experimenting with different coverages and defensive adjustments, the Fever had already created enough separation on the scoreboard to stay firmly in control. Inside the paint, the combination of Aaliyah Boston and Myisha Hines-Allen was especially effective. Together, they controlled the interior on both ends of the floor, winning key battles for position, limiting second chance opportunities, and making life difficult for Atlanta's front court players. And while all of that was unfolding, Caitlin Clark continued to put together an outstanding all-around performance. Despite reportedly dealing with illness, she remained a steady force for Indiana, orchestrating the offense, creating scoring opportunities, and contributing across the board. It was the type of performance that may not have generated all the headlines during the game, but it played a major role in helping the Fever secure a convincing victory. What makes Caitlin Clark's performance even more remarkable is what was happening behind the scenes. During halftime, she reportedly went to the locker room feeling sick and even threw up. Most players would be focused on simply getting through the rest of the game at that point. Clark grabbed some applesauce, recovered as best she could, and came back out for the second half, as if nothing had happened. That level of competitiveness has become one of her defining traits. By the final buzzer, the stat sheet reflected it. Clark finished with 17 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds, ending the night just 1 rebound shy of a triple-double. Those numbers become even more impressive when you consider that Atlanta spent the entire game designing its defense around limiting her scoring opportunities. The turning point came in the third quarter. With the game still within reach, Indiana exploded on a 16-3 run that completely shifted momentum. What had been a competitive battle suddenly became a game the Fever controlled, and Clark was at the center of nearly everything that happened during that stretch. She consistently identified defensive breakdowns before they fully developed. When Atlanta rotated, she found the open player. When defenders overcommitted, she attacked the space they left behind. And whenever the Dream tried sending extra defenders her way, she calmly located the right passing option and kept Indiana's offense moving. That's what made defending her so difficult. Every adjustment Atlanta attempted seemed to create a new problem somewhere else on the floor. Trap her, and she found the open teammate. Double team her, and she quickly moved the ball before the defense could recover. Focused too heavily on stopping her, and Indiana's supporting cast benefited from the extra attention she drew. Now, it's fair to say Clark didn't have a flawless shooting night, but her impact went far beyond her shooting percentage, recording 8 assists against a defense specifically designed to force the ball out of her hands tells its own story. Time after time, Atlanta tried to pressure her with aggressive coverages, and time after time, she made the correct read and delivered the pass that kept Indiana's offense flowing. What makes it even more impressive is that she accomplished all of this while battling a stomach illness that would have sidelined many people, let alone professional athletes competing at the highest level. After the game, Clark even joked with reporters that she felt lighter after getting sick, and she meant it in a positive way. It sounds almost unbelievable until you watch the third quarter footage and see her pushing the pace in transition, flying up the floor, and playing with the same energy that helped Indiana pull away for the win. For someone who was dealing with illness just hours earlier, it was a performance that showcased both her toughness and her ability to impact a game in ways that extend far beyond scoring.
This is Johnson outside to Boston. Yes!
That's a scary sight.
Like, just for...
One of the more overlooked parts of Caitlin Clark's performance was what she contributed on the defensive end. She spent the night matching up against talented ball handlers and perimeter scorers capable of changing a game if given. Too much room to operate, considering that defense was one of the biggest areas critics targeted throughout her rookie season. Her effort on that side of the floor was hard to ignore. What makes it even more impressive is that she delivered that performance while dealing with illness. For years, some of the criticism surrounding Clark has focused on what she supposedly couldn't do, yet time and time again she continues to answer those questions through her play rather than her words. This game was another example of that pattern. After the win, Clark didn't spend time discussing her own statistics or what she had battled through physically. Instead, her post-game comments were simple and focused. She pointed to Indiana's overall effort and the team's defensive performance as the biggest reasons for the victory. That perspective makes sense when you consider what actually happened on the court. The Fever held Atlanta to its lowest scoring output of the season, and that wasn't the result of luck. It came from disciplined defense, physical play, and a roster that executed its game plan from start to finish. Clark understood that immediately. Still, her individual performance deserves recognition, finishing with 17 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds while feeling under the weather would be impressive under any circumstances. Doing it against the defense specifically designed to limit her impact makes it even more noteworthy. At the same time, Myisha Hines-Allen was bringing toughness and physicality that constantly disrupted Atlanta's rhythm, helping establish a level of intensity the Dream struggled to match. Indiana controlled the game in multiple ways, and that balance is what made the win so convincing. When you step back and look at the entire picture, it becomes difficult to focus solely on the rivalry storylines. While attention was being drawn elsewhere, Clark was quietly stuffing the stat sheet, Indiana's defense was dominating, and the Fever were putting together one of their most complete performances of the Dest season. And as all of that was unfolding, Kelsey Mitchell was delivering one of her trademark scoring displays, knocking down shots and making the offensive side of the game look effortless. Together, Indiana stars turned what began as a competitive matchup into a statement victory.
A little sick, but I don't know, I tried to eat some applesauce and then it just came up, and then everything else in my stomach also came up, so I thought I was gonna stay down, and then I found a trash can, thank God, and I haven't puked that much in a really long time, but then I felt fine, I felt light, so I was running around feeling good in the second half, but I feel okay, obviously I'm losing my voice.
Then came Kelsey Mitchell's big night. The veteran guard poured in 25 points while shooting an incredible 1-1 for 1-5. From the field, and in the process she surpassed 5,000 career points. It wasn't just an efficient scoring performance, it was a reminder of how dangerous she becomes when Indiana's offense is clicking on all cylinders. Mitchell did most of her damage by pushing the pace in transition and flying off screens, constantly putting Atlanta's defense in difficult situations. Once the second half began, especially during the third quarter, the Dream never seemed to find a reliable answer for her movement, and numbers like 1-1 of 1-5 shooting don't happen by accident. That kind of efficiency usually comes when an offense consistently creates quality opportunities, and that's exactly what Indiana did. Atlanta kept finding itself trapped between two equally bad options: devote extra attention to Mitchell or focus on slowing down Caitlin Clark. Either choice came with consequences. When defenders leaned toward Clark, Mitchell found room to operate, slipping into open spaces and getting clean looks throughout the game. When Atlanta shifted resources toward Mitchell, Clark took advantage of the extra breathing room, attacking gaps in the defense and creating scoring chances for her teammates. That's the value of having both players in the same backcourt. Each one creates problems on her own, but together they force defenses into a constant guessing game. Every adjustment designed to stop one star opens the door for the other. Atlanta experimented with multiple coverages throughout the night, but none of them solved the puzzle for long. No matter which strategy the Dream chose, Indiana found a way to exploit the weakness it created somewhere else on the floor. For a defensive coaching staff, that's a frustrating position to be in. Spend 2. much attention on Mitchell, and Clark controls the game. Focus on Clark, and Mitchell starts piling up points. By the end of the night, Indiana's backcourt had executed that balance perfectly, and Atlanta spent most of the game chasing answers that never really arrived.
How do you feel about your game tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to shoot the ball a little bit better. I could have, even if a couple more go down, not that I shot it like horribly, but other than that, like I feel like this is probably one of the best floor games I've played in a really long time. I thought I guarded really well, was aggressive on defense, got us into what we wanted to get into on offense, found my teammates in spots to make them successful. So overall, I honestly thought I played a really good game, and the way we played as a team was great as well, and we got to keep doing that. And if we're able to guard like that and limit the other team to the things that they want to do really well, I think we beat them on the glass. I think we made them turn the ball over more than they turned the ball over and things like that. We're going to be really successful, so proud of our...
A big reason Atlanta struggled to find answers was Indiana's ability to create problems from multiple areas of the floor at the same time. Aaliyah Boston's three-made three-pointers completely changed the spacing of the game. Atlanta's front court players were repeatedly forced into uncomfortable decisions. Stay near the paint, and Boston could step outside and make them pay from deep, close out too aggressively, and she had room to attack or move the ball to an open teammate. It put the Dream's defense in a constant state of uncertainty. At the same time, Myisha Hines-Allen was doing important work that doesn't always show up in the box score. There's a major difference between setting a screen that merely slows a defender and setting one that completely takes that defender out of the action. Hines-Allen consistently delivered the second type. Her physical screens created real separation, giving Indiana's shooters the space they needed to operate. Kelsey Mitchell benefited from that repeatedly. Time after time, she came off those screens, found daylight, and knocked down open jumpers. Atlanta's defenders were often left trailing the play, and Mitchell was far too efficient to let those opportunities go to waste. Just as importantly, Indiana maintained its level of play even when its stars went to the bench. That's an area where many teams struggle, but the Fever's second unit kept things under control. Sophie Cunningham used her size and defensive versatility to make life difficult for Atlanta's perimeter players, while Tyasha Harris provided steady ball handling and decision-making whenever she was running the offense. Neither player tried to do too much, and that was exactly what Indiana needed. The bench avoided costly mistakes, kept the offensive flow intact, and prevented Atlanta from gaining momentum during those critical stretches when Clark and Mitchell were resting. That kind of consistency is what separates solid teams from dangerous ones. Teams that collapse whenever their starters sit rarely sustain success. Indiana never gave Atlanta that opportunity. The Fever stayed organized, stayed productive, and continued building on their advantage regardless of who was on the floor.
Mitchell penetrates. Mitchell, automatic.
Kelsey Mitchell reaching the 5,000 point mark would have been noteworthy under any circumstances. Doing it in a high-intensity Commissioner's Cup matchup while scoring 25 points on 1-1 of 1-5 shooting made the achievement even more memorable. This wasn't a quiet milestone in a low-pressure game. It happened against a motivated opponent in a contest filled with energy, physical, play, and playoff-like intensity. And Mitchell's accomplishment was only one part of a much bigger story. Indiana delivered one of its most complete performances of the season. The Fever held Atlanta to its lowest scoring total of the year, received a near triple-double from Caitlin Clark despite her battling illness, got 19 points and 3 3-pointers from Aaliyah Boston, and watched Myisha Hines-Allen bring the kind of toughness and physical presence that helped set the tone throughout the night. Everything worked together. This version of the Fever isn't built around asking Clark to do everything on her. The roster is designed to complement her strengths. There's defensive discipline, front court depth, physicality in the paint, reliable scoring from the backcourt, and experienced veterans capable of handling the dirty work that winning teams require. That's what made this victory stand out. When opponents focus heavily on stopping Clark, Indiana has other players who can take over. When games become physical, the Fever have players willing to match that intensity, and when defensive stops are needed, the team now has the personnel to make life difficult for opposing offenses. In many ways, Clark's MVP conversation and Indiana's championship aspirations are closely connected. The more complete the Fever become as a team, the more dangerous they look against top competition. The 83-71 final score was a strong example of that formula working exactly as intended. Throughout the game, there were plenty of emotional moments and rivalry, storylines that grabbed attention. But when the dust settled, the numbers told the story that mattered most. Clark finished with 17 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds while feeling under the... Mitchell celebrated a major career milestone with one of the most efficient scoring performances of the night. Boston stretched the defense and controlled key possessions. Hines Allen brought toughness that impacted the game on both ends of the floor, and together, those contributions added up to a convincing Indiana victory. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest basketball news, analysis, and updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.